Since 2015, Jared Stillman has rocked Nashville sports.
That team freaking stinks.
And now he's back. The takes are hotter than ever.
I mean, let's be honest, he just can't coach.
Welcome to Stillman and Company.
Stillman and Company on the 440 Sports Network, presented by Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. We are part of the Believe YouTube Podcast Network. As TDG reminds everybody, hit the like button on the way in, good people. Take off your slippers. Let's get to it. Let's get to the show. Hit the like button. It's free. Leave a comment below to get us back in the algorithm. Subscribe if you haven't done that, and tell all your friends and everybody you know to go ahead and like and subscribe. AA Ron says, you people. I don't know if I have a you people rant today. We shall see. But we are going to talk about the basketball here at some point. We are going to get into the Red Hot Predators. I mean, goodness gracious. This team, apparently they can't lose. They did nothing but lose for a year and a half. And now they cannot lose, and it looks like they might make the playoffs. So we'll get into all of that today. Again, of course, fully loaded show. But we must start on the Titans. And so today, Jim Wyatt at the Titans website did what I think is one of my favorite things that he does. And that's every year he does this time of year, he'll drop the Touring the Mock, where he goes through all the different mock drafts and tells you who they have the Titans picking, whether it's Mel Kiper Jr. or whether it's Todd McShay or whether it's Daniel Jeremiah or whomever. And I remember asking Jim one time, I just said, Jim, you got to tell me. I know that is not an original piece, where it's not like Jim Wyatt sits down with all these guys that are mocking the Titans picks and says, why do you mock them here? Why do you what? He's just going through and compiling the research and just kind of laying it out there for Titan fans. I said, how popular is that touring of the mock drafts that you do? And Jim Wyatt told me it's one of the single most read things that he puts on the Titans website. And everybody thinks the Titans are going to take Jeremiyah Love with the 4th overall pick. According to the 20 mock drafts that Jim Wyatt surveyed, of the 20, 13 had Jeremiyah Love as their pick for the Titans. 13 for Jeremiyah Love, 3 for Ruben Bain, 1 for Arvell Reese, 1 for David Bailey, 1 for Sonny Styles, and 1 for Carnell Tate, with a trade out of the 4th pick over to the 12th pick. But 13 of 20 is 75%. So 75% of the draft community thinks that Jeremiyah Love is going to be a Tennessee Titan. And yet, Paul Kuharsky said a couple of weeks ago, he doesn't buy the Jeremiyah Love stuff. I listened to Nick Suss, who I think is plugged in. He was on a football show with Braden on Thursday. It doesn't seem like he thinks they're going to take Jeremiyah Love. And then Adam Schefter last week on his podcast said he doesn't think the Titans are going to take Jeremiyah Love. An hour ago on the Pat McAfee show, said it again. Take a look.
I know a lot of people have had him going to Tennessee. Again, it's just not what I'm sensing right now. And by the way, it's March 23rd. The draft is a month from now. There are a lot of teams that go back and forth on these things. And just because they're not in a spot on March 23rd doesn't mean they won't be in a different spot on April 23rd. So it's hard to say. Today, as we sit here today, my guess would be I don't see him going to Tennessee. I don't see him going to the Giants.
Okay. So Adam Schefter, I feel like that was a double down from Schefter. And I know Schefter wanted to leave in there, we're a month away from the draft, so teams can change their mind. And I think that Adam Schefter's reputation, and again, Schefter's got a couple of different reputations on a couple of different things. But I think as far as Adam Schefter's reputation is concerned, it's important to Adam Schefter that when he says things like, I don't think they're going to take him, that Adam Schefter is probably hearing from somebody who has authority to take him or not take him, that they're probably not going to take him. And so when Adam Schefter says, I don't think he's going to Tennessee. I know a lot of people out there are connecting him to Tennessee. I don't get that sense. I think Adam Schefter is telling you something. As I've always said, there's a difference between I'm telling you and I'm telling you. And I think Adam Schefter is telling you. PK, he made the argument on his show on Friday why the Titans should not draft Jeremiyah Love. And it goes back to the argument about running backs. And Nick Suss has talked about this a lot. And these are more opinions, I think, when PK says it. But I do think that's coming from a place that he's kind of hearing the same stuff. And so when it comes to the argument against Jeremiyah Love, it's basically that running back just isn't that important. Running back just isn't that valuable. That's the argument. And so who's right? 75% of the community that sits there and says, okay, let's just connect the dots. It looks like Jeremiyah Love's going to be a Titan. It makes the most sense for them to take Jeremiyah Love, or Schefter, Kuharsky, Suss, the guys who I feel like are telling you it's probably not going to be Jeremiyah Love. And the answer is, I lean towards the beat guys, and I lean towards Schefter. I lean towards the beat guys, and I lean towards Schefter. And here's why. Number one, I think Chad Brinker talks. And I think if Chad Brinker ever got caught talking, he would probably say that he's doing it for the organization and the good of the organization. And there is an element of that to the game, the game inside the game, where talking to the media, trading info, hearing what other people are saying, that is a part of the game. But I think Brinker talks because Brinker likes to be liked. I think Brinker thinks it's important to have a good relationship with the local media. I can't blame him. I think Brinker thinks it's a good idea to have a relationship with Adam Schefter. And it probably is. So I think Brinker talks. I've pretty much always assumed that he talks to Kuharsky, and I assume he's probably talking to Adam Schefter too. So that's the first thing. When Adam Schefter keeps saying, I get a sense, I don't think he's going there, my gut tells me it's probably coming from Brinker. Number two, I think these guys, Borgonzi and Brinker, are inexperienced at running a football team. And when you're inexperienced running a football team, you don't know what you don't know. And I know that Kuharsky and Suss and everybody else will parade around the fact that teams that draft running backs or spend big on running backs usually don't have Super Bowl level success with those running backs. And for the most part, that's true. I mean, really, the only team within the last decade that drafted a running back high in the draft and had success, I mean, true success with that running back, was Leonard Fournette in Jacksonville. They got to an AFC championship game, and that was for 1 year. And I think we would say there were better picks that could have been had than Leonard Fournette in that 2017 draft. And Kuharsky talks about how the investment at running back is only equal to championship lately one time, and that's Saquon Barkley with the Eagles. But when I hear people talk about running back this or running back that, I feel like that's something a number cruncher would get excited about and not something that a football guy would focus on. Because people will say, well, according to the data, teams that win the Super Bowl, blah, 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 blah. And that sounds great, but until last year, nobody thought you could win a Super Bowl with a retread quarterback. Then it happened. And I know, when it comes to the NFL, the value for running back, even though it looks like it's going up, is still nowhere near pass rusher, receiver, tackle, the premier positions. Well, those players don't exist in this draft that are the caliber of a Jeremiyah Love. So it makes it different. See, I think what happens is young guys that are building football teams get caught up in how to build a Super Bowl team. That's what we need to do. Because the owner, when you're at the bottom, hires you and says, what will it take for us to be competitive? what will it take for us to compete for the Super Bowl? And so these young guys that have never run teams before all of a sudden sit there and say, we have got to build a Super Bowl team. And here's how to build a Super Bowl team, or here's how we think we're going to build a Super Bowl team. And I don't think that's the way to go about building a football team. I think the way you build a football team is you look at what's out there and you try to get the best players on your team so that you can go compete. Again, I don't think Seattle, when they made the move to get rid of Geno Smith and to sign Sam Darnold and to trade DK Metcalf and to let Tyler Lockett go, I don't think Seattle thought this move is going to give us the Vince Lombardi trophy. I think Seattle just looked at it and said, how do we put together the best team we can put together? And so I just think these guys, they're too number crunchy. They're too, well, you got to take this because the value of that is better than the value of this. And not all drafts are the same. If this was the 2021 draft and the Titans were picking fourth and we were having the discussions between Jamar Chase and Kyle Pitts and Jeremiyah Love, I would be arguing for Jamar Chase because he plays the most valuable position. But there is not a Jamar Chase in this year's draft. It just doesn't work that way. So I look at how to build yourself up. And again, I'm not thinking about building a Super Bowl team. When I have suggested what this front office should do, I've never talked about building a Super Bowl team because I think it's too hard to do that. I think it's too hard in the offseason to say, okay, how do we build for a Super Bowl team over the long haul? And again, that's what I think the Titans talk to themselves about. Well, let's not take the running back with the first round pick because we want to build a Super Bowl team that'll compete for Super Bowls for the next 8 years. Do you realize how lucky you have to be in order to compete for the Super Bowl over an 8-year period and to continue doing it? And so, again, I look at running back and I don't value it more than I think I should value running back. But I'm looking at how do you get the most dynamic offensive player available to you onto your football team to help out your young quarterback. And to me, it is by drafting Jeremiyah Love. And I don't want to hear this crap about how running back isn't that important because it's not. But there are plenty of good teams who have invested in running back. The Philadelphia Eagles have invested in running back. The Kansas City Chiefs, where Mike Borgonzi just came from. Remember, you hired him. We want to be the Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs just paid a fortune for a guy who was a good running back and then this year was a great running back. They paid a fortune. The Ravens pay their running back. The Bills pay their running back. I heard Kuharsky talking about, well, the Chiefs don't draft running backs high and the Packers don't draft running backs high, and that's Brinker and Borgonzi's team, so they're not going to draft the running back high. And I actually think Paul's right. Like, I think Brinker's going to be like, well, when I was in Green Bay, we didn't draft running backs high. Right. And then after Green Bay missed the playoffs, guess what Green Bay did? They went out and signed Josh Jacobs. So they pay a running back. Kansas City just paid a running back. Also, don't give me the stuff on how the Chiefs were built because the Titans did the exact opposite. When they had the number one pick and they were starting a new regime, they did the exact opposite of what Kansas City did. Kansas City did not draft a quarterback when there was not a true franchise number one quarterback. They took the left tackle instead. And that left tackle was a part of their Super Bowl picture. So don't give me well, we're going to build like the Chiefs because they already haven't built like the Chiefs. So when I hear, well, we're going to do this, Jared, we're going to build it like the Packers. Well, the Packers have invested heavily at running back. But again, those guys are probably sitting there thinking, let's build a Super Bowl team. And in order to build a Super Bowl team that is competitive over the next 10 years, we need to not draft the running back. But that's because those guys are inexperienced. They're probably thinking, hey, let's make assumptions about how good the guys we've picked are going to be. Let's make narratives that may or may not be true about where we think our team sits. Let's pretend like we didn't have a horrendous year last year. And let's just keep on chugging on this train the way that we did last year. And that's what guys who are inexperienced do. I think a guy who's got experience in the NFL would think to themselves, I just went 3-14 last year, and if I go 3-14 again, I'm fired. And the NFL stands for not for long, and everybody says it, but do you really know it? Just go build the best team you can possibly build. The third reason I think they're probably not going to draft Jeremiyah Love is because the head coach, I would assume, is going to have a say, and the head coach is a defensive coach, and I think naturally he's going to lean towards a defensive player. Now, if we're going to do this thing about the coaching staff and lean on the coaches, which I don't believe in, by the way, I believe the coach should be a part of the discussion. I do not believe the coach should have a meaningful say in the discussion. But when you look at what the Titans did in free agency, it's pretty obvious that the coaches have a very big say. Do you think Robert Saleh knows that Brian Daboll's record as a head coach of the Giants was 15-15-1 with Saquon Barkley at running back and 5-25 without him? I wonder if Brian Daboll, by the way, knows that he was 15-15-1 with Saquon Barkley and 5-25 without him. And I remember when Saquon was setting records with the Eagles and running all over the NFL on his way to the Super Bowl, and I think subsequently Canton, with the season he had in 2024. And I asked one of the producers that was a huge Giant fan that I worked with at Sirius, and I said, how do you feel about Saquon Barkley going to the Eagles and lighting it up? And he shrugged it off and said, well, we weren't winning much with Saquon Barkley, so what's the difference now? Well, the difference now is that you are 5-25 and not 15-15-1. If you go 8-8-1 next year, after being 3-14 each of the last 2 years, we will look at this and think, oh my God, the Titans are trending in the right direction. They've got their quarterback. They've got their coach. He knows what they're doing. 5-game improvement from last season. That matters in the NFL. So I think that if I'm Robert Saleh, I'm saying, hey, we got a young quarterback, and we do not want to ruin the young quarterback. And instead of just assuming, which is what young people that are inexperienced do, and I think that's what Mike Borgonzi and Chad Brinker do, they assume the guys that they take will be good no matter what, and that they don't have to do anything to ensure that they're good. They'll, instead of worrying about how do we keep Cam Ward from busting out of the league, it's, oh no, we drafted Cam. Cam's going to be good no matter what. And I think that's somebody that is inexperienced. And that's why I look at Jeremiyah Love and I'm like, you need to help the young quarterback out. And giving him a running game and giving him a dynamic playmaker with speed on offense absolutely helps out the young quarterback. Just like it helped out the Giants with Daniel Jones and Brian Daboll when he was 15-15-1 with Saquon and 5-25 without him. And then the final thing, the reason I don't think they're going to pick him is because Kuharsky brought up the idea that Kansas City and Green Bay, where Brinker and Borgonzi come from, don't take running backs high in the draft. And I get it. But I do wonder if that's what Chad Brinker's just selling people. Well, when I was in Green Bay, what we did, well, that's great. But when you were in Green Bay, were you ever 3-14 2 years in a row? I don't think the Packers were. So you can say what we did in Green Bay. But how many Jeremiyah Loves have the Green Bay Packers been able to draft? But I think that's kind of what he's selling. I mean, I remember when Brinker got promoted into the head czar of football, and I kept asking, what's he done to deserve that? Like, why is he the head czar of football? And somebody with the Titans told me, they were like, well, I mean, you don't think that experience with the Green Bay Packers qualifies him for that? I said, no. I said that qualifies him to be Ran Carthon's assistant general manager. And when you fire Ran Carthon, you also fire Ran Carthon's lieutenants because they're probably just as dopey as Carthon. But the Titans certainly did not operate that way. They promoted Brinker, and then Brinker got up there and talked about the Packers and draft, develop, retain, and they went 3-14 again. So I want them to pick Jeremiyah Love. And I think most of you people want them to pick Jeremiyah Love. But I don't think they'll do it. Not because they don't think Jeremiyah Love is good. I think they think Jeremiyah Love's very good. Or that Jeremiyah Love would be an impact player. But I think they believe they are too smart to take a running back with the 4th overall pick. Well, Super Bowl teams don't draft running backs with the 4th overall pick. And in a normal draft, where the blue chip talent is much better at premium positions, I would agree. And I would say, take Jamar Chase. Or I would say, try to take Will Anderson Jr. But there is not a Will Anderson Jr. in this class. And there is not a Jamar Chase in this class. The top running back on the board ran a 4.5 at the combine. But again, that's what people that don't know what they're doing, they're inexperienced, they just don't take a running back. And they think what they're doing is their way to build a team like all the other Super Bowl teams of the past, instead of just doing what I believe, which is just go try to build the best team you can build. Go draft the best players. Go sign impact guys in free agency. They think their quarterback is going to be a franchise guy no matter what they do around him. And so when you have that kind of arrogance, you also are going to have the same ignorance that leads you to just write off Jeremiyah Love and say, nope, no running back at 4, not doing it. And that's what I think is happening here. I don't think Adam Schefter's making that up. So I know 75% of the people think they'll take Jeremiyah Love. And yet, here we go. The insiders don't think that. And I agree with them. There is, if they don't go running back, the one thing that I think we all think they're probably going to do. First, though, I want to tell you about Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. They take great care of my home, and they could do the exact same for you. Hiller has taken care of my home for years. They are the best. They've been in business since 1990, family-owned and operated. 100% satisfaction of happy you'll be or your service is free. If a customer is not pleased with the work that is performed, Hiller will make it right. Learn more by visiting happyhiller.com with professional, experienced, trustworthy technicians that come into your home and leave it clean and better than they found it. Care is their core value, and they believe that when they care about others, everybody wins. They'll take care of the customer on every job, every time. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. They take great care of my home. They can do the same for you. Proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. Hiller, call the Happy Face Truck today. Okay. If the Titans don't take Jeremiyah Love, it is most likely going to be because they are going to pick one of these 3. Ruben Bain, David Bailey, or Arvell Reese. Right now, Arvell Reese is the betting favorite to go number 2 overall to the Jets. David Bailey is the second betting favorite to go number 2. And Ruben Bain is the third favorite to go number 2. Why? Because everybody knows the Jets are taking an edge rusher. We just don't know exactly which one they're going to take. And I know Mike Borgonzi got up there and he said there are different flavors with those 3. Arvell Reese is more of a hybrid off-ball, on-ball linebacker. David Bailey is more of a true edge rusher, but he leaves questions in the run game. And with Ruben Bain, he physically profiles to be a tweener and not an off-the-edge game wrecker. That's it. I think the Titans are taking one of those 3 guys. As you all know, I was desperate for the Titans to go get Trey Hendrickson to complete my defensive line, which would then allow me to use the pick on Jeremiyah Love without sweating my pass rush. But again, the Titans are trying to build a Super Bowl team for 7 years out, which is not feasible in the NFL. But they're trying to build a Super Bowl team for 7 years out. So Trey Hendrickson's not a good, no, we're not, no. And I think in large part, the reason they weren't in on the higher end edge market, the Odafe Oways, is because they knew we're going to take one of those three guys. Nick Suss said on a football show on Thursday that his sentiment after talking to the new additions of the Titans, especially the guys that played with the Jets under Robert Saleh, Jermaine Johnson, John Franklin Myers, the sentiment was, let's just be like the Jets under Saleh on defense without Zach Wilson at quarterback on offense. Instead of a first-time offensive coordinator like they had in New York with Mike LaFleur, or instead of a guy who was hired specifically because he was buddies with Aaron Rodgers like Nathaniel Hackett, let's go get a real offensive coordinator who has shown he can develop a quarterback, which Brian Dable has done. Let's go get an experienced offensive coordinator. We've got Cam Ward, who we believe is better than Zach Wilson, and so let's do our thing on offense, but let's be the Robert Saleh Jets on defense. And you know what? Count me in for that. Because under Saleh in 2022, the Jets were 4th in the NFL in defense. In 2023, they were 3rd in the NFL in defense. In 2024, in which Saleh got dismissed after like 5 games, for the season, the Jets were 3rd in defense. Fine by me. You want to be 3rd in defense? I'll take it. But I think this comes with a question that is a very inconvenient to ask. And for every one of you Cam boys out there, you're going to hate this. And I wonder if the owner can accept this. I wonder if the general manager who drafted Cam Ward and said that he had traits like Mahomes can accept this. If you draft Arvell Reese, David Bailey, or Reuben Bain, with the investment you've made, John Franklin Myers, Jermaine Johnson, 3 corners, and you kept Jeffrey Simmons and didn't trade him, which is an investment in and of itself, are you willing to turn Cam Ward into a game manager if that's what gives you the best chance to win? And I know it's an uncomfortable question. I say it's an uncomfortable question because without even looking at the comments, I can already hear you people saying, we wouldn't want Cam to be a game manager. Cam is our franchise quarterback. And I hope, but we don't know that yet. I look at the Houston Texans and I think, what could they have done if they weren't afraid of pissing off C.J. Stroud? Because that Texan defense this past year, that was Ray Lewis, Baltimore Ravens caliber. And when the Baltimore Ravens had that nasty defense with Ray Lewis in 2000, they looked at Trent Dilfer. They benched Tony Banks, and they looked at Trent Dilfer midway through the year. They had Jamal Lewis running the ball, and they said, Trent, don't lose the game for us. And Trent Dilfer said, okay. And Trent Dilfer made some big throws. He made a throw along the sideline to Shannon Sharp against the Titans. It was the big play Baltimore needed. He made a huge throw in the Super Bowl to Brandon Stokely. So I'm not saying that you take the ball out of his hands, but when you've got a defense like that, you are asking Brad Johnson to manage the game. When a guy's got 10 years in the NFL and he's nowhere near the highest paid quarterback in the league, it's easy to go up to him and say, hey, we'd like you to manage the game. When you draft a guy number 1 overall and you hope he turns out to be Patrick Mahomes, it's not so easy. Now, a lot of people talked about Steve McNair as the comparison to Cam. But the Tennessee Oilers and then later the Titans absolutely treated McNair like a game manager in that 1999 and the 2000 season. They gave the ball to Eddie George every chance they could, and they had a smothering defense. And then when they needed McNair to make a play, like the AFC Championship game against Jacksonville, when they ran a play-action pass and Steve ran 40 yards up the middle to the 1-yard line, he did. The comeback against the Rams that fell 1 yard short, McNair made one of the greatest plays in Super Bowl history if the Titans would have won that game, evading a sack from DeMarco Farr and Kevin Carter. But again, when you draft a guy number 1 overall, and you are staking your claim the way Mike Borgonzi just planted his flag in the ground on Cam Ward, can you accept, especially early on, telling Cam Ward to be a game manager? You know, one thing about the Patriots that made them really, really hard to beat is that if Bill Belichick's game plan thought that the most advantageous way for the Patriots to win a game would be to run the ball on the ground and have Brady throw it 13 times, Belichick could tell Brady that, and Brady would accept it. Most guys considered the greatest players of all time don't necessarily love that. That was the strength of Phil Jackson. He got Michael Jordan to pass the ball in the triangle offense. So if you're going to draft Reuben Bain, David Bailey, or Arvell Reese, while I would prefer Jeremiyah Love, my sentiment is you better think that that guy you're drafting is going to come in here and be your Javon Curse. That you're going to have one of the toughest pass rushes in the league with the money and draft choices you are spending on that defensive line. And if you've got a great pass rush and you've got adequate corners, which I think the Titans have right now, then your defense should be very, very stout. The difference between you and Houston is that Houston has everything but better than you. They have Derek Stingley, who's better at corner than anybody you have. They have Jalen Petrie, who's better at safety than anybody you have. And they have Will Anderson Jr., who profiles as a better draft prospect coming out in 2023 than any of these guys profile coming out this year. They also paid Danielle Hunter all that money, $40 million a year, which you won't do on one guy. But if you've got a defense that's Houston Texan caliber-esque, can you go to Cam Ward and say, Cam, we want to run the ball. We want to protect the ball. We want to throw the ball to our tight ends. Can you do that? Or do you look at the investment you made in Cam and what you hyped everybody up that Cam would be, that you unretired Warren Moon's number for Cam, and can you say, this is what he's got to be to justify everything we've said about him? That's my question. One person says, Cam Ward had a higher QBR than Sam Darnold did his rookie year. Right. And when Seattle said, hey, Sam, we need you to throw for 364 and 3 touchdowns to beat the Rams, Sam could do it. But when they needed Sam to just not turn the ball over against the Patriots in the Super Bowl, Sam could do that. So I'm cool. If you draft one of these guys, Bailey, Bain, or Reese, I'm cool with that. Because what you'll be telling me is that Robert Saleh is going to have a top 5 defense. And unlike some of this daydreaming people do with things about, well, Borgonzi hit it out of the park in the draft. Well, we don't know that, and he hasn't proven that yet. So now you're just hoping. But when it comes to Robert Saleh having a top 5 defense in the NFL, Robert Saleh had a top 5 defense for 3 years with the Jets. So I think Robert Saleh can have a top 5 defense in the NFL. If you draft one of these guys, my expectation after the money you spend in free agency and the guy you're using the 3rd pick on or 4th pick on, my expectation is that you'll be top 5 in the NFL in total defense. Can Cam manage the game? That doesn't mean that I'm asking Cam not to win the game for me, because when you play games like that, they're going to be close at the end. And if you're down in the fourth quarter, you can't turn around and hand it off, which means Cam's going to have to make some of those superstar Cam plays. And I think Cam can do that. That means that you're going to want to run the football. Teams are going to bring their safeties up. Let's run play action. Cam, can you hit the deep ball to Chim DK to keep the other team honest? If Cam can do that, you can win a lot of ball games without Cam throwing for 400 yards. Again, Steve McNair won a lot of ball games throwing for 186. You did not in that era go to Brett Favre and tell Brett Favre, hey, man, can you manage the game? But you could do that with McNair. Can you manage the game and win it for us in the end? And that's what I would ask Cam Ward if I have a top defense and he's a second-year quarterback with no dynamic weapons on offense. But I guarantee you that I don't think the Titans can do that. Just like the Texans. I don't think the Texans made it to the Super Bowl last year because I didn't think they had the balls to tell C.J. Stroud, stop turning the ball over and go sit on the bench. I said this to Corey Curtis before the start of the playoffs. I said, I think Davis Mills would be a better option for that particular Texan team because the Texans and their coaches would have had no problems telling Davis Mills, hey, man, protect the ball, don't lose us the game, let the defense win it for you. And with that defense, that Texan defense was so good last year. With that Texan defense, they would have gotten out of the AFC with Davis Mills at quarterback. They beat Buffalo with Davis Mills at quarterback because that defense got 8 sacks of Josh Allen. But they couldn't do it. And at halftime, I'm sitting there thinking to myself, you got to take him out. Like, you got to. C.J. Stroud against the Steelers crapped the ball out of his ass the entire game. Now they get matched up with the Patriots, and he's crapping the ball out of his ass in this entire game. You've got to get him out. But they wouldn't do it because they thought, well, he's our franchise quarterback, and if we take him out, if we tell C.J., hey, manage the game, then C.J. will believe that we don't think he's going to be a star quarterback. And I think that cost you a trip to the Super Bowl. Will you get to the Super Bowl if you're Houston with C.J. Stroud? I don't know. If I was a betting man, I'd say no. But again, they didn't have the balls to bench him. I think if Mike Vrabel was the coach of the Texans, I think Mike Vrabel would have benched C.J. Stroud. And I think he would have put Davis Mills out there at halftime of that game. But Vrabel has balls. I mean, I have had my run-ins with Vrabel. You all know that. I like Vrabel. But, and I have no problem to call out Vrabel's flaws, but Mike Vrabel has balls. Like, I'm not sitting here telling you that Vrabel doesn't have balls or anything else. Let's get to some of your Titan reaction here on the program. One person says, making defenses play honestly by respecting the run should only make life easier for Cam. I think I can make an argument for Cam Ward for anything the Titans do with that 4th pick. If they take David Bailey, the argument is we've got one of the best defensive lines in the NFL. We're going to put pressure on the other team's quarterback, and that is going to help Cam Ward succeed. And I think that might be fair. Same with any of the other guys that they could take. Reese, Styles, Bain, any of those guys they take, hey, we're making the defense better, and the defense better is going to help Cam. The way I look at it is I think your defense should be good enough right now. I mean, I hate the fact that they left open that edge spot that I so would have given to Trey Hendrickson. And for you salary cap people out there, you people should be demanding to know why they didn't go sign a Trey Hendrickson type player with all the cap space that they have available to them. But they can still draft an edge at 35. I know they're going to work Oladejo in there. Maybe he doesn't suck, though I'm operating under the assumption that he does. But again, with Saleh and just the wave of pass rushers he's going to throw out there, veteran guys, Simmons, Franklin Myers, Johnson, I think they should be good enough to rush the passer. I think the running game is the part that really helps Cam. I think the running game helps Cam with Jeremiyah Love. I think throwing the ball to Jeremiyah Love out of the backfield helps Cam. And let me say this, and this will be a much bigger topic as we get closer to the draft. If they don't take Jeremiyah Love and Jeremiyah Love becomes a superstar, they'll get fired for it. This is one of those ones where it's like, hey, man, if you make this choice, because the decision from the fan base to take Jeremiyah Love right now is such a popular one that if you go against it and it blows up in your face, you're fired. It's going to be A.J. Brown 2.0. But I can make the argument either way. I do think that the running game would help for whatever that's worth. Maddie says, like, Brinker has a clue on how to build anything, certainly not a workable AI model. I do not understand what they see in Chad Brinker. I don't. But then again, I have friends get married to people that I have no idea what they see in the people that they choose to get married to, so who am I to judge? But I do have some friends out there that have gotten married to some people that I'm like. TDG says Bailey is the target. I actually think that's probably true. I mean, I think they'll be okay with I think they're thinking it's either going to be Reese or Bailey. Because I think they'll think that Arizona will go with an offensive player at 3. And the only, kind of discussion is Love or Bain if both Reese and Bailey are gone. One person says, didn't PK say the Titans' priority was re-signing Chig and Zeitler? I think the Titans are using PK to spread false information. PK hasn't reported anything accurate in a while. I mean, I think PK, when he said that they were trying to sign Chig and trying to sign Zeitler, I think they were trying to sign Chig and trying to sign Zeitler. I still think they're trying to sign Zeitler. I think what's happened is Zeitler's camp has said, here's the number we're willing to come back to this shitty team for. And the Titans are saying, well, we can't do that number. And if they could have done that number, they would have done that number before free agency. I just think that what they've done is they've just kind of are trying to work out a deal and save every last penny. MB says, you don't copy what other teams do or follow cliches. You choose the best players. If Love is the best, you choose him. You'll never go wrong. That's what I believe. I believe in building the best team you can build. And just go get the best players. Because every time I've talked to a general manager who has fucked up in the draft, it has never been, you know what, that was the best player and we took him. It's never been that. Floyd told me one of his biggest regrets was Bryant Mix. And he only took him in the second round in 96 because all the coaches and all the scouts said, you got to take him. And that's how you end up with J.C. Latham over Brock Bowers. Is well, we have to have a tackle, so go ahead, take the tackle. That's how you draft Corey Davis. Well, we have to have a receiver. Go ahead, take the receiver. No. Go take the best players. And that's why I think I could be sold on Reese or Bailey over Love. I'm not sure, given his measurables, that you can sell me on Bain. Maddie says they'll draft the defensive end with T-Rex arms who will be nothing special. My latest mock draft last week has Ruben Bain at number 4. Johnny says Love is going to go nuclear and the rest of these guys will fizzle. It will look bad if they don't take him. See, this guy says, I agree. If we pass on Love, they should be gone. Well, no. That's not how it works. If you pass on Jeremiyah Love and then Jeremiyah Love blows up, then she'll fire them. But if they don't take Jeremiyah Love, and let me say this, let me be just abundantly clear here. If they've done their work and they don't think Jeremiyah Love's that good, then I wouldn't take him. If I didn't believe in the player, I would not take him. So now that means they may not believe in him, and then he becomes a superstar, and that tells me what I need to know about you, and you're fired. But be very careful on that. Windu says, I think free agency proved they are trying to build the best possible team, though. Then where's Trey Hendrickson? Like, why didn't they go buy a middle linebacker? Devin Lloyd. That's just, hey, we're just going to go get the best players and put them on our team. The Titans, I don't believe, got the best player at any position. They didn't sign the best corner. That was Jamel Dean. They didn't sign the best offensive lineman. They haven't signed a meaningful offensive lineman. They didn't sign the best receiver. So I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to build a team. I think they're trying to build a core that they are going to argue is going to be our core for the next 10 years. And when they sign Skoronski to an extension, that's exactly what they'll say. Okay, to the basketball that we have to get to over the weekend. 3 teams to start on. Tennessee to the Sweet 16. Congratulations to Rick Barnes. We'll start with them. I thought Tennessee, outside of the last, well, I shouldn't say the last 8 minutes, but like from minute 8 to minute 2 in the second half, Tennessee was atrocious. Other than that, I thought Tennessee played great last night. And I thought that this, of all the jobs Rick Barnes has done as Tennessee's coach, off the top of my head, I think this might be the best one. And I thought Gillespie last night was awesome. I think that what Tennessee wants Nate Ahmet to be is what Gillespie is. And I think Gillespie was nails last night. And I thought the bigs really powered Tennessee. From Estrella to Akpara to Carey. Even Carey played well last night. And Tennessee got out to that big lead in the first half, and they pretty much led the entire game. Virginia came back in the second half, and I wondered if Tennessee was going to fold. You know, hey, Rick Barnes got up out of his chair and called timeout as Virginia went on a run. That shows growth for Rick Barnes. And they say you can't teach an old dog new tricks. He called timeout during a Virginia run yesterday. And I think that this shows, as much as we hear the coaches talk about how what really matters is NIL and the transfer portal, and a coach loses a game, and when a coach loses a game, he gets up at the podium and acts like a whiny little crybaby and talks about how I don't have what it takes to succeed. And I'm not saying Rick Barnes doesn't have NIL money, but look at some of the coaches that have made it to this weekend. Guys who can coach. Izzo, back in the Sweet 16. Patino, back in the Sweet 16. And I think Barnes is not in the Patino-Izzo category. He's certainly a step below that. But I think as we've seen a lot of guys that can really coach basketball, Kay, Roy, Bruce Pearl, Jay Wright, as we've seen those guys leave the game, I think there is a vacuum that has been created, and it has bumped Rick Barnes up. And I thought yesterday he was the better coach last night. So I give all the credit to Rick Barnes. And again, Gillespie was great, and I thought their bigs played really, really well. Something is not right with Nate Ahmet as far as he's concerned, but either that or he's just not that good. You know, I look at these mock drafts, and everybody tells me how good Nate Ahmet's going to be. I see Darius Acuff for Arkansas. That dude is going to be a freaking dog. I mean, I don't know who, the Scandinavian kids that might be out there that they might take number 1. But I look at Darius Acuff, and I'm like, that kid might be Allen Iverson. That kid as a freshman can carry a team. Nate Ahmet, he can't carry this team, but he may not have to. Now, I do worry about Tennessee and having to face Iowa State in the Sweet 16 on Friday night, because Iowa State is freaking loaded and they're well coached. To Vanderbilt. What a train wreck Saturday night for Vanderbilt. And I can say it was a heartbreaker because of how it ended, with the ball going in and out on Tyler Tanner from half court. And Tyler Tanner was fabulous for most of the game. But on one hand, it's a heartbreaker. And on another hand, for Vanderbilt, it's just a highly, highly disappointing performance. I said after Vanderbilt lost to Arkansas in the SEC championship that it was a game that Vanderbilt could have won, but it probably wasn't a game that Vanderbilt should have won. Well, Nebraska on Saturday night was a game that Vanderbilt should have won. Vanderbilt started with their heads up their asses, and they were playing catch up for the first 75% of the game. So instead of being toe-to-toe with Virginia and then with Nebraska and then going on their little run, they were always playing from 5 or 6 behind for 75% of the game. Then once they dug themselves out of that hole, they took the lead in the second half, and it was like every time they took the lead, every offensive possession after that, something crazy would happen. Guys who shouldn't shoot the ball would shoot the ball. Guys that should shoot the ball. Tyler Nickel would get an open look, and I'm like, that's going in. Clank. I don't know what happened to Duke Miles in the McNeese game, but he was awful in the Nebraska game. And then at the end with 39 seconds to go, I thought Mark Byington kind of crapped his pants. And I look back at the Vanderbilt game. And you know when a coach gets up there after a team loses because of a ref's call, and the coach usually likes to say things like, well, it wasn't really one call that changed the game. It wasn't that. I think that what it was it could have been any number one of things. That's what happened to Vanderbilt on Saturday, was a plethora of fuck-ups on their part cost them the game. And I know we can talk about the double dribble, and I don't know how you miss that double dribble, but I don't get it. Vanderbilt played great against Florida. If they played the way they played against Arkansas on Saturday night, they would have beaten Nebraska by 15. They played crappy at the beginning against McNeese, but then got it together. They never really got it together against Nebraska. So if Tanner's shot goes down, they win. If Tanner makes his free throws at the end of the game, they win. If Duke Miles makes a meaningful shot, they win. I could not believe Mark Byington, 39 seconds to go, and I felt that he was in no man's land when they got the ball with 39 seconds, because it's like you've only got one timeout. If you got 2 timeouts, I think Byington calls it right there because he knows he's got the other one in his back pocket in case somebody trips or something happens. But because he only had 1 timeout left, he didn't want to call it. When they got the ball with 39 seconds, I was saying call timeout. And the reason I was saying call timeout was because I think if you're Byington, you've got to decide what kind of game you want to play. Do you want to play a game where you hold it for 30 seconds, shoot it with 9 seconds, and then see what happens? Or do you want to draw something up where you tell Tyler Tanner that ball's got to be out of somebody's hand with at least 10 seconds on the game clock so that we will at least get it back? Do you go 2 for 1 with 39 seconds? But there's no way to communicate that to your team without calling timeout. And then as soon as Tanner took it in there and he got doubled in that zone by Nebraska, Byington should have been screaming for a timeout. And so Byington, I think he's a great coach, and I think he's done a great job at Vanderbilt, but I thought he had a pretty terrible night on Saturday at the end of the game. And that's what they pay you for. Like, they pay you to win those games and to not make those mistakes. And I credit Nebraska because they played hard, and their fans traveled. It wasn't like the game was in Omaha or Lincoln. It was in Oklahoma City. But Vanderbilt lost a game on Saturday night they should have won, and it only hurts more considering that Florida lost to Iowa. And Vanderbilt would be wearing white jerseys in the Sweet 16. They'd be staring down an Elite Eight, maybe even a Final Four, if they could have just done one of 30 things to not fuck up on Saturday and lose. And for Byington, in 2 of his 3 NCAA tournament games, I feel like Vanderbilt should have won and didn't. And that is a concern. And then Kentucky. I mean, what a mess that program is right now. So Kentucky on Friday needs a miracle, an absolute miracle. And I'd say it's even a double miracle, because not only did Otega Owe hit the shot that Tyler Tanner missed at the end of the game to tie it, to send it to overtime. But you needed the miracle of the referee missing Herb Sendek, the Santa Clara coach, calling timeout. And they got it. So they survived Santa Clara. If they had lost to Santa Clara after firing John Calipari for losing to Oakland and St. Peter's, they would have been in real trouble. But they won that game. I mean, I think Mark Pope, I almost said Mark Stoops. I think Mark Pope is on the hot seat today. If they lost to Santa Clara, he might have gotten fired. Because that's just so egregious. So they win that game. And Kentucky fans get all high and mighty, and Matt Jones and everybody else. I'm like, you needed overtime to get past Santa Clara. You needed a miracle from God in order to beat them. You suck. And not only does Kentucky stink, but they paid a fortune for that roster. And the president of the university has already come out and said, we're not going to have the money to fund this kind of team next year. So Pope's going to stay on as the coach. They're an athletic director purgatory with Mitch Barnhart on his way out. And Mark Pope stinks. And everybody knows it. You know, I thought I was being that hot take guy that they accused me of when I said that North Carolina should fire Hubert Davis if they lost. And then it basically everybody else afterwards was like, yeah, North Carolina should fire Hubert Davis, including Carolina, who's like, yeah, we probably should fire Hubert Davis. I believe it is inevitable. Mark Pope is going to fail. Kentucky's not going to be good enough next year. They're going to fire him, and then they're going to go hire another coach. And this isn't as bad as Billy Gillespie or anything like that, but he's not good enough. He's not a blue blood level coach. Just like Hubert Davis at Carolina is not a blue blood level coach. But man, what a mess. Kentucky got absolutely curb stomped yesterday. That's embarrassing. I wouldn't say you're better off losing to Santa Clara, because losing to Santa Clara in and of itself is an embarrassment. But that one yesterday, that one was tough. And now you've got to sell your fans on a third season for Mark Pope, and they're not going to have the NIL money they had last year to be able to build that team. And we kind of all know Mark Pope is entering next year on the hot seat, and it is very unlikely that he'll do enough to keep his job because he doesn't seem like he's that good of a coach. So bravo to Rick Barnes. Disappointing performance on Saturday by Vanderbilt, and what a mess they have in Kentucky. Couple of other thoughts that I have as far as the college basketball is concerned over the weekend. Number one, I believe Hubert Davis is done at North Carolina. UNC might hire Mark Byington. I think right now Todd Golden at Florida is the favorite to be the next UNC coach. I don't know. I mean, right now, I don't know. Here's what I'll tell you. I think North Carolina is going to go outside the family, outside of the Dean Smith family, and that'll be controversial. And what happens with these big jobs in today's climate is usually when a really, really big job opens up and a candidate is speculated for that position, he then gets an offer from his current employer and just decides to stay where he's at. I mean, Mike Norvell turned down Alabama to stay at Florida State. Dan Lanning got an extension at Oregon. And that's Alabama football. And in the last couple of years, we've seen Duke come open. Now, Duke didn't run a coaching search because they wanted John Shire to be the coach. But that's who Duke hired, an assistant with no head coaching experience. Kentucky came open a couple of years ago. And everybody thought because it's Kentucky, a true blue blood, that they'd be able to get whoever they want. Scott Drew said no. Jay Wright said no. Billy Donovan said no. So now when there's all the talk at North Carolina about who they're going to hire, I hear people talking about Dusty May. Dusty May is going to stay at Michigan because if Carolina calls, Michigan will make him an offer he can't refuse, and he's already winning there. Then I hear about Billy Donovan. But we've only heard this with Billy Donovan in every big job over the last 10 years. He's not leaving the NBA. I think the guy North Carolina should hire is Josh Schertz, the head coach at St. Louis. And I know St. Louis didn't make it to the Sweet 16, but they beat Georgia by 25, and Josh Schertz was a great coach at Indiana State and has done yeoman's work at St. Louis. He turned down the Syracuse job, and some people say, well, he turned down Syracuse, so he probably wouldn't take North Carolina. No, he turned down Syracuse because it's Syracuse and because it's not North Carolina. And I think that's an experienced coach who understands today's game, that won at Indiana State, won at St. Louis, and now let's give him the North Carolina resources and see what he can do. And I know that this coaching search, if North Carolina has one, is going to just go totally off the rails. Because I heard today Stephen A. Smith advocate for Kenny Smith, the Jet, to get the job. Number 2, I can't do all this Cinderella is dead stuff. Because the tournament has had so many mid-majors compete. Wright State was competing with Virginia. They didn't win, but they competed. Siena was competing with Duke. Santa Clara was right there with Kentucky. Those are mid-majors. And my issue is not about NIL or the transfer portal, which has hurt Cinderella. It's the fact that all of the big conferences have swallowed up all the top teams, and then there's a ripple effect. At one point in time, Conference USA used to have Louisville, Houston, Memphis, and Cincinnati in it. Those are all schools in their histories that can get to Sweet 16s and Final Fours. And that's Conference USA. Well, now take a look at Conference USA, and it's North Texas and Texas San Antonio and Western Kentucky, and it's just not a good conference anymore. And then I see these other schools, like the Big East schools, and I'm like, well, wait a minute. Are these not mid-majors? They don't even have football programs. Well, we can't consider UConn a mid-major, can't consider St. John's a mid-major, can't consider any of those. I guess St. Louis winning a game doesn't count as a mid-major because they're in the Atlantic 10 now. So I guess you have to be Scarbini State, and you have to win in order for us to believe that Cinderella still exists. I think you'll see a St. Peter's win a game every now and then. But give me a break when it comes to all this. Cinderella's dead, and it's the transfer portal and NIL to blame. And speaking of the transfer portal and NIL, I am so fucking tired of all of these college basketball coaches getting up to the podium and whining about money. Yesterday, Mick Cronin was asked what his team needed, and he said $5 million more in NIL money. Well, Mick, don't they pay you a lot of money? Isn't that why they pay you that money? How come Major League Baseball managers don't do that? When people ask the manager of the Reds, why can't you beat the Dodgers? Their payrolls are not even remotely close. And yet you'll never hear the manager of the Miami Marlins, after losing 3-1 in extra innings to the Dodgers, say, well, they spend about $800 million more on their team than we do on ours. You never hear an NFL head coach go up to the podium after the game and say, well, Jacksonville spent $70 million more on their team last year than we did. And yet every single college basketball coach just feels entitled to bitch about how they don't have enough whenever they lose, unless it's like Mark Pope, who everybody knows has enough. I mean, I don't even know if we have as much whining in football when it comes to not being able to compete. But oh no, Mick Cronin loses. I need more money. Again, isn't that what they pay you for? And finally, I did not like Nate Burleson hosting on CBS with their coverage of the tournament. And I say this with all due respect to Nate Burleson, who I think is a fine analyst at the desk during football. This idea that Nate Burleson is going to be the guy to replace James Brown is, in my opinion, offensive to James Brown, and I think offensive to that position Like the position of lead host of CBS's March Madness coverage. I think if CBS were to lose James Brown on the NFL, and I guess people were saying this is what they were testing Burleson out for, is could he one day replace James Brown on Inside the NFL, or the NFL Today, which is even bigger than their March Madness coverage. The answer, no. Nate Burleson is an analyst. He is not a host. And I think it's disrespectful to Adam Zucker. I think it's disrespectful to Adam Lefko. I think it's disrespectful to Ernie. I think it's disrespectful to the people that are actually good at being a studio host to say, let's try out Nate Burleson because we like him. And I didn't think Nate Burleson was very good. I think Zucker should be the lead guy for CBS's coverage if Ernie's not going to be there. And apparently James Brown's not doing basketball, because that would be my choice, would be JB. But if you're not going to do JB, you're not going to do Jim Nance, fine. Then just Adam Zucker's been doing this for a long time. Adam Zucker's good at what he does. I think he'd be fine. And I think Zucker's doing a good job, and I think Lefko's doing a good job. And I can't. There are so many good studio hosts out there. You do not have to put Nate Burleson in that spot. Give me a break. And then finally, how about the Nashville Predators? Holy crap. They can't lose. I mean, they were on the cusp of the playoffs, and the discussion of, if everything breaks their way, they could make it into the playoffs. And since then, they've won 6 of their last 10. They've won 4 in a row. And last night they won in overtime at Chicago. And all these teams they're competing with, they're playing down the stretch in their run to the playoffs. According to moneypuck.com, the Predators have a 52% chance of making the playoffs. And I'm not even going to get all worked up about the fact that with UC Saros missing games with some sort of an injury, with the biggest games on the season upcoming, and Eustace Onanen won them easier than Saros does. I'm not going to bring that up and complain about it. I'm just going to say this. Are the Predators going to make the playoffs? Maybe. It's very, very possible now. Whereas before, it wasn't really as possible. It's very possible that the Predators could make the playoffs. And if they do, good for them. This isn't like 3-4 years ago when the Predators were telling everybody, you just have to get in and then anything can happen. They traded a second-round pick that year for defenseman Jeremiyah Love. It was a terrible trade. I think the reasoning that I have here is that when it comes to the Predators, they did sell at the deadline. They didn't sell everything, but they did sell. And so they've got future assets coming in. They didn't tie themselves down to anything that they can't undo. And next year, they'll have a new general manager. And who knows what that means for the coach. But they weren't going to trade Yossi, Forsberg, Stamkos. No one would want Saros or Marchessault. So you might as well make the best of a bad situation. And for me, that's giving us exciting hockey down the stretch here in March and maybe a playoff round. And if everything breaks right, maybe a 6-game playoff round. So I'm cool with what's happening with the Predators. And I give a lot of credit to Andrew Burnett because it looked like he couldn't fix this. And to a certain extent, he has. And so we'll see if they end up making the playoffs again. MoneyPuck.com says they have a 52% chance of making the playoffs. 52% does not mean 100%. But things are looking good. And all those old pawpaws that people said, oh, maybe they're done, they're actually playing pretty well. And so I know that this weekend, the Preds had 2 games, and I kind of kept up with them. One of them I was on Sirius XM for, so I was paying attention to that. But the other one yesterday, I'm not trying to be rude, but I was watching basketball. Well, there's not going to be any basketball to watch tomorrow, and that's when the Predators take on San Jose at home. A biggie tomorrow. And then on Thursday, unfortunately, I won't be able to go to the game, even though I would love to go to the game on Thursday. I won't be able to go. We're going to Hilton Head. But the Devils at home. Again, those are two biggies. So we shall see with the Predators, and they are at least giving us something to watch down the stretch. A fine send-off for FanDuel Sports Network, whom we hopefully will never have to deal with. Well, I know we'll never have to deal with ever again. That's it for us. Great program today. Like and subscribe. Tell your friends. Download the Stillman & Company podcast. If you are talking to people who are like, man, I love Jared Stillman when he was on the radio. Where is he now? Tell them right here. And on SiriusXM. But tell them right here, like and subscribe. It's all free right here. The YouTube channel, like and subscribe. The podcast, like and subscribe. And we'll see everybody live tomorrow at 2 o'clock.